Pleitgen now in Moscow. Fred, I'm assuming the Kremlin not happy.
No, they're not happy, and we literally just got a reaction from the Russians as we went to air here. They're saying that they're calm in the face of these new Treasury sanctions, but at the same time, they are already working on measures to hit back at the United States. They've not said what exactly those measures are going to be, but keep in mind, this comes as the Russians say they're also going to hit back at the Brits for just expelling 23 of their diplomats for that other thing, poisoning that Russian spy on British soil using a nerve agent. So the Russians today, right now, very busy lashing out at the U.S. and its allies. We'll get you more once we know exactly what the Russians plan to do, John.
Fred Pleitgen in Moscow. Appreciate the breaking news there. Fred, thanks so much. With us here in studio to share their reporting and their insights, Julie Pace of the Associated Press, Olivier Knox with Yahoo, Osted Herndon with the Boston Globe, and Politico's Rachel Bate. I want to get to the president in a minute, but first I do want to get to, it is important, after months of muddled language, mixed messages about 2016 Russia meddling. If you read the Treasury Department statement released about an hour, a little more than an hour ago, it is clear. The language is blunt. The sanctions track the Mueller indictments. And you have the administration, and again, a lot of people will say, where have you been? But we have the administration today on the record saying this happened, it was malign, it was nefarious, and we're going to do something about it. That's in and of itself is a big deal, right?
And that's what a lot of Trump allies on Capitol Hill have been waiting for, actually, for this president and this administration to come forward and not just accept the conclusions of the intelligence agencies about what Russia did in 2016, but actually to take some action on this. And there's been this huge gap between the administration and congressional Republicans who are more hawkish on Russia. I think the fact that it took this long will still be an undercurrent, but yes, we shouldn't take away from the fact that this is a tough action, and I do think it's notable that that clearly what the administration has been doing behind the scenes tracks so closely with what Mueller has been doing.
And to that point, as everybody else jumps in, Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, smartly politically, whatever your view on this, if you're him, this is smart politically, he issues a statement right away. The fact that the administration has issued sanctions against individuals and entities indicted by the special counsel Mueller proves that this investigation is not a witch hunt, as the president and his allies have claimed.
Right. No, this is kind of the bare minimum, I think, that Republicans and Democrats would say the president is doing. They would want him to do more. Chuck Schumer, beyond that statement, said this is point blank not enough. He said that the White House should be doing more to protect the midterm elections. Like, what are they going to do to stop this in the fall when the elections are happening? And basically, they said the president's silence on this speaks volumes in and of itself. I mean, they are taking action here. But we don't hear much from the president. Compare that to Theresa May, who after the attacks in her own country was out there speaking publicly, condemning Putin, but condemning Russia. We are not seeing the same thing from the president at this point.
That's an important point. I think that this is now a retroactive sanction, looking back at what they did in 2016. But when you look at what folks on the Hill are saying, they want a proactive measures to insulate and to protect the election system going forward. And we have yet to really see that. We have seen intelligence chiefs say they expect Russia to come back again, and still we do not have those measures yet from the Trump administration to protect the American system going forward. So I imagine that congressional, both Republicans and Democrats, will still be looking for more. But as you say, this is a kind of bare minimum start.
And the riddle remains, Olivier, the president himself, in the sense that he had a brief photo op with the Prime Minister of Ireland, who's here. We'll see the president on Capitol Hill. That's a much lighter event. People make jokes. Everybody's Irish, celebrate St. Patrick's Day. But the president knows the media is coming into the room. He knows what his Treasury Department has just done. He knows that his White House has joined a very strong statement. U.S., U.K., Germany, and France, essentially, as I said, they don't say it so clearly, but if you read the statement, they're saying Vladimir Putin's government tried to kill somebody in a sovereign nation using an incredibly dangerous chemical weapon that hasn't happened since World War II. And the president says nothing tough. He did say, I talked to the prime minister and I agree. But there's an opportunity to frame Putin for what he is, and the president won't do it.
Right. There are obviously two responses. One is the Trump response. The other one is the Trump administration response. And you've seen that over the past 6 months to a year. You've seen the administration decide to provide Ukraine with lethal defensive weapons. The Obama administration had always held back on that. You saw that remarkable attack, apparently spurred on by Russia in Syria against U.S. allies there and U.S. forces, repelled forcefully. Now you're seeing today's briefing was really interesting. They talked about these sanctions in three buckets. Election meddling will get the top billing, of course. But they also talked about a Russian cyber intrusion into the energy grid, and they talked about the NotPetya malware, which spread all over Europe and caused tens of billions of dollars. There seems to be an escalating confrontation with Russia here. It bears noting, it bears watching very, very closely. But I don't know that we're ever going to hear the president come out and do this forcefully. He's resisted for the last 14 months.
To the escalation you mentioned, though, is it at least evidence that the people who work for the president, maybe they were timid about going after Russia in the first place because they knew they might draw his ire? If they did so, if they talked openly about meddling, if they talked openly about active measures, as the intelligence community calls it, is there at least more confidence in the ranks that they can do this despite the president? Is that the right way to put it?
I think despite the president is the right way to put it. I think that there is still a difference in terms of the way that cabinet officials sometimes approach this versus some of the rank and file who are actually having to implement these policies. They're clearly getting signals that they should move forward on some of these punishments. But if you look at someone like Mike Pompeo, who's going to be nominated to be the next Secretary of State, he's someone that is very attuned with what the president wants to at least hear on Russia. He will say things like, yes, I accept what the intelligence agencies have said happened during the 2016 election, but also Russia's been doing that for years. That's happened previously, trying to draw this distinction between the idea that Russia was meddling in the election but not doing it to help Donald Trump. So he's someone, again, who's very attuned to what the president wants to hear on this, and he's going to be, presumably, if he can get through confirmation, our top diplomat dealing with the Russians.
To the bigger question of Russian behavior, though, if you're the president and you don't like to talk about election meddling because you think somehow you're undermining your victory, the president has an opportunity now. The current allegations against Putin and Putin's government about the spy poisoning in Britain, continued Russian aggression in Eastern Europe, the malware you mentioned in Europe, it's attacking the economy in Europe. The president has a broader case now he could make against Putin, and yet he doesn't. He doesn't. And so is it because the critics say, aha, Putin has something on Trump, or is it just because Putin often says nice things like this?
Despite the fact that he's a first-time president, still, he's a quick study after all, and he understands very well that this level, where we are, engaging in mutual accusation and insults, this is a road to nowhere. He clearly has leadership qualities. They are clearly present because he takes responsibility for making decisions. Again, whether or not someone likes his decisions or not, he makes them nonetheless. That is undoubtedly a sign of having these leadership qualities.
We know this president likes to be flattered, but is it that simple? I called it a riddle earlier, and I don't see the political downside for the president being tougher on Putin, and yet 14 months in, he won't.
Yeah.
Well, you made one really good point about the letter that Steve Mnuchin signed that lays out all the sanctions and a lot of the accusations. They directly blame the GRU, one of the military intelligence agencies in Russia, for the meddling, tie them directly to that. That would lead us naturally down to the conclusion that Putin himself signed off on all of this. But the letter doesn't really explicitly go there. And I don't think the president will either. I think one of the things that the president wants is he wants to be the guy who fixed the relationship, right? He wants to be the guy who fixed the relationship with Putin. It went south under George W. Bush. It went south under Obama. And he wants to be the guy who brokers some kind of U.S.-Russian détente.
One of the things that I think the president just can't really get his head around is that until he comes forward and forcefully denounces these actions by the Russians, until he comes forward and forcefully denounces Putin himself, the questions about his potential connections to Russia will never go away. This is always going to be the undercurrent, and it's confounding why he can't square this. He complains about the continued questions, but he could do a lot by simply coming forward and being more forceful.
And to both points, especially yours in the sense that, yes, the president wants to be the guy who fixes the relationship, but sometimes you have to decide, I don't want to fix this relationship. Given the current Russian behavior, the escalation, the no signs of any better behavior from Vladimir Putin, why would you want to fix the relationship at this moment, I think is a question.